Welcome, love writers. This episode of Literary Herbalism is highlighting the stinging nettle plant and the fairytale, Six Swans. Recorded use of nettle dates back to the Bronze Ages. Its multitude of medicinal applications have remained in use for thousands of years, and I've listed those that are definitively supported by scientific research today. Stinging nettle leaves and stems have fine hairs that release irritating chemicals upon contact with skin. While the hairs or spines are painful to touch, local exposure to areas of pre-existing pain in the body can actually decrease it. Scientists believe that nettles achieve this pain relief by reducing levels of inflammatory chemicals and by interfering with the manner in which our bodies transmit pain signals to the brain. Native to the colder regions of Northern Europe and Asia, this herbaceous shrub now grows all over the world. Nettle stems are upright and rigid. The leaves are heart-shaped, finely toothed, and tapered at the ends. Flowers can be yellow or pink, but the plant is normally foraged for food or medicine before blooms set. Stinging nettle likes moist and nitrogen-rich soil. It grows abundantly at the edges of human activity and reaches a height of 2 to 4 feet. Medicinal forms of stinging nettle include teas, extracts, and tinctures, topical applications, and both the loose and encapsulated forms of dried powder. Stinging nettles are not recommended for use during pregnancy. They do have some prescription drug interactions, and you should always consult your doctor before starting any long-term herbal regimen. Nettles are possibly the most nutritious plant on earth, high in minerals like calcium, iron, potassium, and magnesium, which are easier for our bodies to utilize in whole plant form than they are in supplements. They also contain high amounts of antioxidants, vitamins A, C, and K, and substantially higher amounts of protein than other leafy greens. They're more nutritious than spinach, kale, or asparagus. Fresh leaves are blanched to render their sting inert, and that makes them the star of this hearty nettle soup, as well as dishes that you would normally use spinach in, like quiche or lasagna. I keep a supply of powdered nettles to add a nutritional boost to my smoothies, soups, and the like. And I also stock it in the apothecary that I use in conjunction with my Reiki clients. The Romans used nettles as a food source, as a meat tenderizer, and for the medicinal purposes we've discussed. And they took the seeds with them to Britain. There's even a crazy story that they would practice urtification, which is striking themselves with nettles to inflict stings that would keep them warm on the battlefield. I've not been able to confirm the veracity of that legend, but it wouldn't have been necessary because nettle is also a textile. The fiber is extracted from the pith in the stem, and it has a historic use as a common household textile in Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries, as well as during the First and Second World Wars, when it was used as a substitute for cotton yarns. And rounding out this plant's myriad uses, it has been historically used to make ink and is still commonly added to hair products. And now, if ever there was a story that could rival the versatility of stinging nettles, that story would be 6 Swans. Most widely recognized in the Book of Fairytales compiled by the Grimm brothers of Germany in 1812, 6 Swans is categorized as a Type 451 tale of magic, the maiden who seeks her brothers, in which a princess has her siblings cursed and changed into creatures by an evil stepmother. A profuse number of variations on this theme were found throughout Europe and stretched as far as India, Japan, the Middle East, and Sudan. In Denmark, the tale was told by Hans Christian Andersen as The Wild Swans, and in Scotland, the story found its way into Andrew Lang's collection, The Yellow Fairy Book. In most versions, the brothers are cursed as some form of avian creature, but in a few variations, they were turned into ground creatures. The number of brothers was also variable by version, as was the plant required to remedy the curse. These might be oleander leaves, chrysanthemum, starwort, or nettles. For our purposes, I will tell the story employing the traditional swans with their lovely symbology. And the plant will, of course, be nettles. Once upon a time, a king was widowed, and he was left to raise his 6 sons and 1 daughter, each whom he loved dearly, on his own. One day while hunting, he became so involved in the chase that he found himself deep in unrecognizable woods without his entourage. He was truly lost, growing hungry, and the sun near setting, when he encountered a crone, and he implored her to help him find his way. But the crone would only come to his aid on the condition that the king marry her daughter, who was brought before him almost as if they were expecting him. She was a beautiful young woman. However, she made the king feel most uneasy. He looked in desperation at the darkening sky and agreed. Then he was shown the way back to his castle with the young woman. The king kept his word, but he did not trust his new bride, especially with his children. So he secreted them away in a castle so hidden by trees that it required a magic ball of yarn to lead him there and back again by unrolling in front of him to show him the way. The queen soon grew suspicious of her new husband's frequent absence, and she bribed a servant to tell her everything. The next day, she took the magic yarn and left the castle before the king. And upon arriving at the hidden castle, she cursed all 6 boys as they excitedly ran out to greet their father by throwing darkly enchanted shirts over them, which turned them into swans. The princess, however, was reading a book in the castle tower, and she did not run out with her brothers. She heard the commotion and poked her head out the window, where she saw each of her brothers grow wings and feathers and fly away in confusion, one at a time. Some time after her stepmother had gone, The princess's father arrived, and the girl recounted to him the frightening events, and she showed him the feathers that were left behind. The king then insisted that the princess return with him to his castle, where he could watch over her. But fearing her stepmother greatly, she begged him to allow her to stay one more night at the hidden castle, in case her brothers came back. The king agreed reluctantly, but when he left, the princess left too. She walked through the forest all the rest of that day, and all through the night, and all of the next day. And then, at the end of that day, she came upon a hut in the forest. Upon ensuring that it was empty, she went inside. She saw 6 beds, and exhausted, she lay down underneath one to rest. At dusk, a noise awoke the princess, and as she opened her eyes, she saw, to her amazement, 6 swans fly in through the windows and land on the floor of the hut. They huddled around each other, blowing and blowing, until all of their feathers were blown off, and before her stood her 6 brothers. The reunion was joyful and short-lived. The brothers explained that the hut belonged to robbers, and that she must leave or be harmed upon their return. They told her that they could not protect her because they were only able to take their human form for 15 minutes each day and would then turn back into swans. The only way to break the curse was for her to craft 6 shirts from stinging nettles, and furthermore, she could not speak or laugh until the shirts were done, or all of her work would be for naught. And then they became swans again and flew away. The princess quickly left the hut and returned to the forest, where she began collecting the stinging nettles to save her brothers. She worked and slept in the branches of a great tree, only coming down to attend to her most basic needs. And so it was, as time passed, and the first 2 shirts were completed. Then one day, a group of hunters discovered her, talked her down from the tree, and presented her to their king, who ruled the nearby kingdom. The king fell in love with the princess immediately, despite her odd work and lack of speech, and he convinced her to be his queen. Everyone in the kingdom celebrated the new queen and rejoiced when their first heir was born. Everyone except the king's mother, that is. She did not believe that a mute and possibly a peasant girl was worthy of her son. She was so resentful that she crept into the new queen's chamber as she was sleeping and smeared blood across her mouth. Then she stole the baby and hid it, claiming that the infant's mother had eaten it. The king did not believe that his wife could do such a thing, but the princess could not speak to defend herself, and as her mother-in-law repeated the plot and accusations of cannibalism upon the birth of a 2nd and 3rd child, the kingdom grew very agitated. Even the king finally agreed that the queen must be burned at the stake as punishment. The princess had continued her work through everything, and as she was taken to the pyre, she was finishing the 6th shirt. Just as the fire was about to be lit, there appeared in the air around her 6 swans. She threw 1 shirt of nettles over each of them, and then her brothers took their human form. The princes and their sister, who was finally able to speak, told everything, and then the king knew that his wife was innocent, and his mother, instead, was exiled for her lies. And they all lived happily ever after.